Hey everybody, and hi Dr. Anderson. I just wanted to take the time to present to everybody my research today that I've been working on for the past 3 semesters. Congratulations to everybody, we are almost done. This has been a really long journey, but we're there, so I'm looking forward to seeing everybody else's video too. So if everybody remembers, or whoever took the time to watch my video prior, my study is on the effects of integrated and interdisciplinary learning on graphic design education. So my problem statement that I typed for this was, what is the impact exactly of integrated education on students' professional competency and their artistic abilities within the field of graphic design specifically? So I did a lot of research over the past few semesters. I did not end up using all of the information that I found. I actually had a hard time finding literature that was relevant enough to my subject because not only is graphic design itself a very constantly changing field, it's also been a very recent change that integrated education is becoming considered for the field. So finding literature or studies done on integrated learning or interdisciplinary education in graphic design was really difficult. Because of that, I didn't actually meet my minimum requirement on my sources. I was able to find 25. I wasn't able to get 30 because I didn't want to throw in a bunch of unrelated information, which, trust me, I had documents and documents of a lot of unrelated information that I didn't end up using. So a lot of the information that I did find out there had to do with integrated learning in art education in general, which there's been a debate as to whether or not interdisciplinary education within the arts is appropriate, because primarily people who are not for integrated education in art feel that it pulls a student's focus away from their discipline, I guess you could say. It pulls them away from the time that they need to develop their skills and their ability to make fine art. But with graphic design, it's a little bit different, just because the field in and of itself is kind of already interdisciplinary, because it walks that line between the business world and the art world, and a graphic designer has to be capable, a lot of the literature stated, in being able to communicate with lots of different disciplines and people who are in different areas of study. So it's kind of a commercialized art form, I guess you could say, which qualifies it more for a different degree program. And like I said earlier, it's changing a lot, so I could just spend so much time reading all of the information to you. My whole paper ended up being over 40 pages long, which surprised me, but I want to stick within my time limit. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about my study that I did, the data that I collected, rather than waste your time with all of the literature that I found. I decided to contact and interview as many working design professionals as I could find, as well as graphic design educators, and I was able to get 7 people all together who volunteered to help me out and allow me to sit down and interview each one for about an hour apiece. And I asked them a series of questions that were based on my theoretical framework, which was Bassoff's theory of teamwork, and I justified my decision to use this theory within my paper because when it comes to judging art in and of itself, it's really difficult to find any specific theories out there in the literature that remain consistent to how to judge artwork and what makes it good or what doesn't make it good. So I had to go along a different route in terms of choosing a theoretical framework for the paper. And graphic design is a very team-oriented work, especially if you're working in a design firm or if you're working for any kind of a layout team. You have to be capable of working with other people, and there's a competency that comes with that level that's very necessary to the field. And I feel like I'm so much more able to talk about all of this after my study. My results I found were very mixed, and I really wish that I could have had a lot more participants that were willing to take part in the study, because it would have given it a lot more me, I feel like, and I would have found more trends within the data that I collected, but because I was only able to get 7 people to participate, I did get a lot of really good data and information, but it was hard to find the trends because of how varied everything was. And it was also a qualitative study, so because all of my questions were open-ended, of course there was a wide variety of answers because everybody interpreted them a little bit differently. But I did get some really interesting information. So there were 3 art educators that I was able to interview, and the rest of them were working professionals. It seemed like with the educators there was less of a trend in feeling that business training should be more heavily integrated into the graphic design degree program. However, when I asked all of the working professionals, they strongly felt that business classes and business training should be much more incorporated into graphic design training. Because they felt that once they were graduated with their disciplinary degrees, they were thrown out into a business world that they knew nothing about, and it was difficult for them to teach themselves how to run a business, how to be able to do basic business functions, and they felt very unprepared for their own field. So that was something that I guess overall was one of the most interesting aspects of the study. Also, it seemed that a lot of people were concerned with how broad the field itself is becoming, and that every day almost it seems like a graphic designer has to learn a new skill or some new technology or some new program that's being developed, and it's hard for the education system to keep up with the trends. And because of this, the degree program itself is becoming very vast, and a lot of people who graduated felt that there was almost too much information shoved into their degree program because they weren't able to comprehend and retain a very large portion of it. They also feel that because the field is becoming so much more specialized, once they were out in their working field and going down the path that they chose for themselves, a lot of the information that they were made to learn during their degree program seemed unnecessary, and they would have liked to have had more of an opportunity to personalize the program that they took so that they could have made it more their own. One example of this was a motion graphic designer who felt like there were very limited classes available at the school that he attended, which was in the East Coast, up in the northern East Coast. That he couldn't take the classes that he wanted to learn the profession that he wanted to follow because they just weren't available. And there was a lot of other things that he was made to have to learn that he felt didn't apply to his career path after he was finished. So that was kind of another trend that I found within the data. Let me just make sure I'm doing this right. So the interview guide consisted of 15 different questions, and I had 3 to 4 different questions within each of my variables. There were 4 variables total for the theory, and I made sure to explain to my participants the definitions of certain terms that they may not be familiar with prior to interviewing them, such as my definition that I chose for integrated education and interdisciplinary education, so that they could at least be on the same page. And I asked them questions concerning, the first variable was ideas of openness and receptivity to ideas other than one's own, so a student's ability and desire to relate to other people. The second variable was attitudes of respect and value for other disciplines, which is a trusting of others after achieving your own self-competency and security. All of the graphic designers that I spoke to on variable number 2 said that they feel like an interdisciplinary student would have a competitive edge probably in their own field if they were familiar with more disciplines and more lines of work, just because of the nature of the work itself, having to work for so many different clients who could be from any line of work that you're unfamiliar with, and just the more knowledge that you have on various disciplines, probably the better you're going to be able to relate to that client's needs and what it is they want you to design, thus being able to create a more successful piece of work. Because that's what determines success within the graphic design field, is not necessarily how beautiful your work looks or how decorated your piece is. It's about how capable you were of meeting the needs of the client who hired you. So that was a really interesting aspect that came up during my study and collecting of data. The third variable that I asked the participants about had to do with attitudes of interdependence and acceptance of a common goal. So being able to work with a team and put personal investment into the work and make your own personal needs and tastes and desires subservient to the actual project itself and make the client's needs priority. And the fourth variable had to do with attitudes of willingness to share and take responsibility within that framework of a team working together, so that there's mutual support, ability to admit one's own mistakes, and there's those overlapping roles that people have to be able to work with, such as being responsible to do more than one job at a time, which is again very common in the field. And I also found that a lot of the participants said that they believe interdisciplinary students may have yet another competitive edge in the graphic design field due to a higher awareness of their social setting and where their field fits into the professional world as a whole, which could give them a better ability to relate to other people, have more empathy for other people, and be able to creatively solve problems from different perspectives than what disciplinary students have been taught. So to kind of go over briefly my entire conclusion for my study is, I'm pulling it up, I apologize. It seemed that the instructors felt that integrated learning could almost, in certain ways, be a negative thing for graphic designers because it takes time away from the student in perfecting their abilities and skills, like I said earlier, and that because there's so much information a graphic design student is required to learn now, the more time that they have to spend on learning those skills, the better. But also, the field of graphic design itself is ever-changing and becoming more socially driven, and graphic designers are expected to have more of a social awareness and more stronger abilities to solve problems for various audiences and a very broad target audience. They have to be constantly willing to research new things and learn new skills because of the ever-changing dynamics of the field itself. And also, they said that they believe a higher level of openness and trust between disciplines would improve a student's ability to be successful in the graphic design world. And something interesting that came up also was, I believe future research from this point could be focused on the comparison of graphic design degree programs versus other standard degree programs that are in other disciplines such as science and humanities or business field, whether or not a graphic design student is actually required to learn more material than any other students would be required to learn. Just something that I was kind of interested in. But anyways, that's a pretty good, compact overview of my study, I believe. Thank you so much for watching. I apologize for the length, and I hope you have a wonderful day. All right, bye.